All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating collision course. The extraordinary, sometimes wild claims of mind-body healing, going head-to-head with the rigorous, hard, clinical science of the placebo effect. We're going to explore that immense, largely untapped power sitting right inside your own head. So let's just get right into it. We have to start with the incredibly alluring phenomenon presented by Dr. Joe Dispenza. He basically challenges us to move completely out of our familiar pasts and step into the elegant present moment. His whole thing is that to truly change our biology, we can't just be our normal everyday selves. We literally have to lose our known identities and step into the total unknown. It's a fundamental ground-up shift in how we perceive reality. And that brings us to his central thesis in You Are the Placebo, which is a real game changer. He establishes that the placebo effect isn't just some weird anomaly, right? It's not a mistake or a glitch in a clinical trial. Instead, Dispenza argues that the placebo effect is actually us. It's a built-in biological mechanism that we can consciously harness to unlock some pretty incredible possibilities for healing and longevity. To really unpack the whole shebang, we're going to hit 5 key areas today. First, chasing the mystical state. Second, the biology of belief. Third, the placebo phenomenon. Fourth, how placebos alter reality. And finally, the power of expectation. Okay, part 1. Chasing the mystical state, entering the unknown. Let's look at how Dispenza actually outlines this pursuit of a transcendental state of consciousness. According to his methodology, you need these 4 highly specific, actionable steps to induce a mystical experience. First up, you've got to wake up between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. I know, it sounds intense. But why? Because that's exactly when our melatonin levels are peaking, and our brain waves naturally slow down into those crucial alpha and theta frequencies. Next, you sit up to meditate longer than usual, which makes your body surrender super deeply when you do finally lie down. Then you record your dreams. This is to practice staying conscious while you're dipping into the subconscious realm. And lastly, you perform specific breathing techniques to pull energy right up into the brain, oxygenate it, and essentially stimulate the pineal gland.
Dispenza asserts that if you actually follow these steps, the internal experience skyrockets your energy and emotion. You basically end up experiencing an entirely different world, totally beyond our normal 3D reality. It's a full-on sensory experience, but without using your actual senses. And the absolute most crucial takeaway here is that this elevated emotion actively conditions your body to a new mind. It neurologically reshapes your brain, telling your body, hey, we're no longer living in the past. We are in a brand new reality.
Which leads us to part 2, the biology of belief, measurable transformations. So, the million-dollar question, do these purely subjective, internal experiences actually translate to physical, measurable changes in the human body? Well, let's look at the data. A recent study out of UC San Diego looked at participants from Dispenza's 7-day retreats, and they reported what they called a complete biological reset. And this is without any pharmaceutical intervention whatsoever. They found profound, and I mean profound, physiological adaptations. We're talking heightened brain activity that actually mimics psychedelic states, massive increases in proteins like BDNF, which supports hardcore brain rewiring, elevated natural painkillers, actual changes in gene expression, and a seriously boosted immune system. The internal mystical experience quite literally left a very real, measurable biological footprint. What's really fascinating when you dive into his material is how he specifically dedicates entire chapters to the placebo effect in both the brain and the body. And this acts as the perfect bridge, taking his mystical frameworks directly into our next topic. Section 3. The placebo phenomenon, the clinical consensus. We're pivoting now from Dispenza's specific methods to the much broader scientific and clinical consensus about the mind's ability to heal. Clinically speaking, a placebo is defined as a completely inert treatment. We're talking your classic sugar pill, a simple saline injection, or sometimes even a sham surgery. They're primarily used in randomized clinical trials just to keep test participants from knowing who's getting the real drug, because simply expecting a treatment to work can drastically skew the results.
But human history is absolutely packed with these placebo responses outside of the lab. Take 18th century Paris, for example. Back then, pyramidal elm bark was considered this massive cure-all for the nerves, the chest, the stomach, you name it. There's this famous, kind of hilarious anecdote where a prominent physician told a patient to hurry up and take the bark while it still cures. It just perfectly highlights how novel, trendy treatments often work incredibly well for no other reason than the intense cultural belief placed right into them.
Moving to part 4, how placebos alter reality. the psychological mechanisms.
So, if a placebo is chemically totally inert, how on earth does it produce actual physical relief in the human body? Psychologists generally point to two overlapping mechanisms. First, you've got expectancy theory. This is top-down. You consciously believe you're getting a strong medicine, so you actually start to feel different. Then there's classical conditioning. This one is way more subconscious. Over time, if you constantly take a pill and feel better, eventually just the mere act of taking a totally fake pill triggers your body to heal. And notice how remarkably that echoes Dispenza's whole concept of consciously conditioning the body to a new mind.
The hard neuroscience behind this is just mind-blowing. In the case of placebo analgesia, which is just a fancy term for pain relief, neuroimaging proves that the brain physically alters itself. It literally releases its own endogenous opioids. Your brain makes its own natural painkillers. It activates specific areas of the cortex, and it heavily relies on your dopamine reward pathways. The brain can even alter your spinal reflexes to physically block pain signals, all because it simply expects the pain to go away. Finally, part 5, the power of expectation, measuring the impact. Let's actually look at the data to see just how powerful this combination of expectancy and conditioning is in modern medicine. Prepare to have your mind blown by this number. A really fascinating meta-analysis by psychologist Irving Kirsch using actual FDA data concluded that a staggering 82% of the response to antidepressants could be accounted for by placebos. 82%. Now sure, the exact interpretation of this data gets debated by scientists, but it undeniably proves that the pure expectation of feeling better plays a massive, undeniable role in psychiatric recovery. Furthermore, our biology and our age heavily dictate how we respond to this belief. A systematic review of treatments for drug-resistant partial epilepsy showed that children had a 19% placebo response rate. Compare that to just 9.9% in adults. Children actually process drugs differently, sure, but they are also highly susceptible to the rituals of care provided by trusted adults. Because of that, they demonstrated nearly double the physical healing response to completely inert treatments.
But actually, scratch that. This might be the craziest part of all, the concept of open-label placebos. Recent trials show that even if a doctor hands you a sugar pill, looks you right in the eye and explicitly tells you, hey, this is a sugar pill with zero medicine in it, patients still see positive health effects. The sheer ritual of receiving care and the symbolic physical act of taking the pill is enough to trigger the body's healing mechanisms. No deception required whatsoever.
Extending the boundaries of what we know really takes the science to its logical conclusion. We are constantly, day in and day out, shaping our biology, our brains, and our bodies by the thoughts we think, the emotions we feel, and the intentions we hold. It perfectly, almost poetically, marries the rigorous clinical placebo research directly with Dispenza's mystical pursuits. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Whether you want to call it chasing the transcendental unknown, or you just want to call it classical conditioning and expectancy theory, if the end result is a biological reset driven entirely from within yourself, the implications are absolutely staggering. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the incredible untapped potential of your own mind.